All right, welcome back to Photoshop. So today we're going to do something kind of interesting. And what we're going to do is we are going to reconfigure the toolbar. Now this Photoshop has just been loaded onto my computer, and so it is in its default mode. And what I'm going to do today is show you how to reconfigure, and this is the toolbar. I'm just going to go ahead and grab this toolbar out of here so it's a little bit easier to see. The toolbar is located over here, and the first thing I'm going to show you, if you come up here to these two little arrows up here and you click on this, it shortens or makes that smaller and puts this in 2 rows. If you click on this, it will become a single row. What I'm going to do is just drag this out so you can see it, and it makes it a little bit easier. However, most of the time we're actually not going to see the toolbar here. So the next thing that we're going to do is then we're going to come up here to edit, and you're going to go down to toolbar. And what this is going to do is bring up this menu, and I'm going to make this menu just a little bit bigger, but then we're going to eventually make it full frame. So right now it's saying show, and it's referring to this. And if you come down here and highlight this, you'll see this is toggle showing extra tools in the last toolbar slot. And what this means is I'm actually going to take some of these tools and remove them and put them under extra tools. And that is a way for you to access them. The next one that we have is the foreground background. So you can either hide or show that. The quick mask, which I don't use, so I can turn that off. You can see when I click that button, it turns that on or off. I'm going to turn that off. And the last one is these different views of the screen mode. And I actually don't click on this to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and I'll show you what that does. I need to clear this out first. So we'll just go ahead and hit done. You could either click on that button or you could hit their quick key, which is the letter F. And so this is the different views that option would have done. I don't use it. I just hit the letter F because it's a whole lot easier. So we're going to come up here and go to edit and back down to toolbar. And then we're going to go ahead and make this full screen so it's a lot easier to see. Now notice when you are using the toolbar, you usually have something on a top level and something on a bottom level. And if we come down here, if you look here, you see these little arrows. And this means if you were to go ahead and hit done, and I was to click on this, you can see there's 2 things nested together. This isn't something I actually really like too much. So I'm going to remove a lot of these in certain circumstances. So we're going to come back up to edit, go back down to toolbar, and once again, make this full screen. The first one that we have here is artboard in the move tool. And this is your quick key over here to get access to it quickly. And if you hit V, the first time it goes to the move tool. However, I never use the artboard tool. So I'm going to take it and drag it over here into extra tools. Meaning these are just extra ones that are available, but I don't actually use it. And so what that's going to do now is make the move tool kind of in its own little space. You can see once again, these selections, because they're in this lighter gray area divided by these darker gray areas, that these are all nested together. Now, I don't really use these a lot. However, I think it's fine for them to be nested together. And truthfully, it's not going to make that much of a difference. What I'm going to do in this case is just go ahead and leave those like that. Now, the next section that we have down here is the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. Well, if you've watched a video of me showing you how to use them, you know that I can't stand the magnetic lasso tool. It's been around forever, and I absolutely think it's horrible. However, I don't need to put the polygonal lasso tool as its own little item. I'm going to leave it nested because there's an easier way to get to it. So when you're using the lasso tool, you can simply just hold the Alt Option key down and it will switch to the polygonal lasso tool. So I'm going to be fine with that. Once again, the quick key is L, and you could change any of these. However, if something else is already using the quick key, it's going to have a little disclaimer pop up. This is going to be the first section where I'm going to start separating things. So the first thing that we have is the magic wand. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Now, I don't use the magic wand tool a lot, but I'm going to make it its own separate icon. And then I'm going to take the quick selection tool and move that out. So now the object selection tool, the quick selection tool, and the magic wand are all going to be on their own space. And they are all changed with the letter W. However, I can change this information. So I could click on this and type O. And as long as there isn't an O, now the O will be the quick key for object selection tool. But watch what happens when we come down here to the quick selection tool. If I hit the letter Q, quick mask is using the letter Q. So when I go ahead and try to apply that, it gives me this little disclaimer saying you can't use that because that Q is used for the quick mask mode, and it will set that back to its default. So I'm going to go ahead and leave these on the default because I don't really use the quick keys for either one of them. But if I need to, I can just hit W or W and get either one. The next thing that we have is the crop tool and the perspective crop tool. Now, I don't actually use the perspective crop tool, the slice tool, or the slice select tool. What I'm going to do is just drag these over here because in the case that I need to access them, I can simply just click on this button to get to them. And it's very rare that I'm going to need them. So I'm just going to go ahead and move those over there because they're not ones that I need to use. We have the crop tool. The next thing that we have is the frame tool. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Then we have the eyedropper, the 3D material eyedropper, and I don't work in 3D, so we can go ahead and move that over there. We have the color sampler tool. We have the ruler tool, which I usually just hit R to get the ruler, so I'm not going to need that as a tool. And the note tool, which I never use, and the count tool, which I never use. I'm just going to leave those in their own separate spot. Now here, once again, we've come down to something where I can't stand having them nested together because I use them all very often. Now the red eye tool, I never get red eye. As a photographer, once you understand the concept of using flash, it's pretty easy to not get red eye. So I'm going to go ahead and move all of these out. Because I'm moving them all out, I'm just going to go ahead and leave the quick key for them. I don't really use the quick keys. I usually just click on the tool. In this case, I think it's going to be okay. Then we have the brush tool, the pencil tool, the color replacement tool, and the mixer brush tool. In this case, I'm going to just leave them nested together. I pretty much only use the brush tool, and very rarely would I ever use either one of these, so we're just going to leave it. The next one is the pattern stamp tool. I don't use the pattern stamp tool, so I can remove that and just have the clone stamp tool. So we have the history brush, which I very rarely use, and the art history tool, which I very rarely use. We're going to leave them there because it might be something that I do tutorial on or I occasionally use, but it's not that important. Next, we have the eraser tool, the background eraser tool, and the magic eraser tools. Now, I don't really use erasing tools. A lot of times I'm doing this in a mask. We're just going to leave those nested together. Next, we have the gradient tool, the bucket tool, and the 3D material top. I don't use this, and I don't use this. So we're just going to have the gradient tool by itself. Next, we have the blur tool, which I definitely never use. If I blur, I use a different method. I don't use the sharpening tool, and I might use the smudge tool, but very rarely. So we're just going to leave that on its own. Next, we have dodge and burn and the sponge tool. The sponge tool I will not use. So we're going to move that over into extras. And we're just going to leave the dodge and burn tool there. Now, I don't do a lot of cutting out. We have the pen tool, the freeform pen tool, the curvature, all this stuff. I'm just going to leave it as is, nested together. Same thing with the type tool. We have a bunch of different options, and I'm happy with that. Usually it's going to be the horizontal type tool, 99.9%, but occasionally I might use one of these, so we're just going to leave them nested below. We have the path selection tool and the direction selection tool. Once again, I'm going to leave those as they are. And then we have a rectangle tool, which I do use. The rounded rectangle tool, I do use some of this, but I'm actually going to move the custom tool out because I use it quite often and it's easier to not have to go into them and use it. Usually I'm using this and this, so we're going to leave it like that. The hand tool, I don't actually use because I just hit the space bar. It's way easier to hit the space bar than the hand tool, so we don't need it. And the last thing that we have is the rotate view tool, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that up. And then we have the zoom tool. Don't really use the zoom tool, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is. Just like that, now I can come over here and hit save presets. So we're going to save this as a preset, and I'm going to put JW images toolbar, and this is saving into custom toolbars, and we're just going to go ahead and hit save. and then done. And just like that, you can see now my custom toolbar has been set exactly how I want it. And I leave it in a single line. And if I ever need to get any of those options, I can easily come over here, click and hold, and you can see all those extra tools are nested below in one giant heap of a whole bunch of stuff if I need to get to them. But most likely I'm not gonna, and all the tools that I actually use are all out. That is how you set up a custom toolbar inside of Photoshop. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.